9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to Movie Time Machine, where each episode we pick a movie from the past and relive it in the present. This week, we travel back to the year 2004 and revisit Saw, directed by James Wan, starring the guy from The Princess Bride and one guy from Lethal Weapon. I'm your Time Machine host, Chad, surrounded by my Time Machine friends, Jamie, Kris, and joining us for the first time, Casey. Thanks
What
for joining
up?
us.
Hello.
Hey. Yo.
Casey, do you want to play a game?
Oh, no.
Do you want to play a game?
Sure.
Okay, I can only promise
in.
I'll say that 2 or 3 more times
Cool.
throughout the
Deal.
duration of the show.
All right, so let's just kick off and get a quick synopsis of the film. Then we'll go over some box office. Then after that, we'll do some quick thoughts, talk about the movie. Then we're going to do a top 5 horror movie list from each one of us. And then we'll finish it out. So let's do a synopsis of the film.
All right, the synopsis. 2 strangers who have awakened in a room with no recollection of how they got there soon discover they are pawns in a deadly game perpetrated by a notorious serial killer. Looking at the box office here, they had a budget of $1.2 million. Their opening weekend, they saw $18.2 million, and they ended up grossing overall $56 million. If we look cumulative worldwide gross, that actually was $103 million. So not bad on a $1.2 million budget. They also say $1.3 billion or million.
You said million.
Good, just making sure.
Million.
Yeah, $103 million. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, what movies do we get? Do we have like a top 10 for box office that year?
No, not that I have on here. But I can probably look it up.
Just trying to see what great movies we got that year for horror movies. We get The Grudge. We get Blade Trinity.
Nice.
Hellboy.
Oh, the first one's really good. The first Hellboy. I stumped
Yeah.
for that movie.
Was that Guillermo del Toro?
Yep, that was Guillermo and Ron Perlman.
Okay. If we're looking at top movies worldwide box office in 2004, Shrek 2 is number 1. We've got Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is personally my favorite Harry Potter movie. And probably arguably the best book, even though I've never read them.
All of a sudden, I feel like I'm surrounded by Harry Potter fans.
Oh, you are.
Spider-Man 2. Oh, interesting. Number 4 is The Passion of the Christ. Number 5, The Incredibles. Number 6, The Day After Tomorrow. Number 7, Meet the Fockers. Number 8, Troy. Oh, that's a Brad Pitt. I didn't like that one. The whole like Achilles thing at the end, couldn't do it. Number 9, Shark Tale. And number 10, Ocean's 12.
Ooh.
The worst of the oceans.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is that by the Indian Ocean?
I think so.
Daniel Indian Ocean robbed the casino. That is correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of a meh year for movies.
A lot of sequels in there.
Yeah, not
I think
great.
movies we're missing, though, again, like movies that may not have been like the top films, but some big movies that came out that year, like Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
You get Napoleon Dynamite. What else
You get
there?
Without a Paddle.
Without a Paddle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Classic.
Sideways, right?
However, Goodbye Lenin
Kill
did come
Bill
out that year.
Volume 2,
Fantastic German film.
right?
Yeah.
That's pretty low for a Tarantino movie as
Yeah.
far as grossing in the top 10.
Motorcycle Diaries, great film.
That's a good movie.
Shaolin Soccer.
Oh, I saw that.
You just said Motorcycle Diaries?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it came out in 2004. Oh, and Life Aquatic,
Oh, top 3 movie
great
for me.
films. Yeah,
Secret Window as well.
haven't seen that.
I like that one. That kind of got a bad rap, but
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it's not Stephen King's strongest story or movie, but it's a nice little thriller. I don't know. I didn't have anything bad to say about that.
Actually, Sideways is on here too, which is a really awesome indie film.
I said that.
Oh, you said Sideways?
Yeah, but that's
Oh.
okay.
Sorry.
We just get it.
I was looking at the
That's-
list
that's-
while you were
that's okay.
saying it, so it's probably like...
That's okay.
It's just how good it is. It gets referenced
Right.
twice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like couscous.
Did you say The Aviator as well?
Yeah, I have seen The Aviator.
No, but that came out that year. Did
Yeah.
you say that one?
No, I did not.
Okay, yeah.
I
Aviator too.
saw it, but I didn't say it.
Yeah.
So clearly not as good as Sideways.
So
Side
impressions.
note, side note on Sideways, was it Thomas Hayden Church?
Yeah, the
That's
guy that
inside
plays
Wheel.
Lowell from Wings.
I haven't seen Wings.
Oh yeah,
But he
no,
was
yeah,
in this HBO series that just ended, Divorced.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I think it's like 3 seasons. It's like him and Sarah Jessica Parker.
yeah. I saw the first season.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
It's really good. Kind of like a dark comedy-ish. Like, I don't know. Good time. But anyway, let's do first impressions of Saw. So I'm assuming that everyone saw.
Saw.
That'll only happen 3 more times as well in this show.
Can I promise it 3 more times?
So yeah, let's just go around the table. Let's start with Jamie.
Yeah, I remember seeing this. I think it was around high school. So 2004 high school for me. And I don't remember which year specifically, but this was, and I remember when it came out, this was a film that it's kind of hard to properly contextualize its reputation. I mean, it was really gross and kind of the critics didn't know what to do with it, and it kind of got tagged with this torture porn moniker, which has gone with films like that and Hostel ever since they stopped making Saw movies. So it kind of kickstarted a subgenre. There's debate within, the horror community, but yeah, I remember being blown away with the twist ending. What else? Yeah, I guess initial thoughts. I mean, you see the movie poster with the severed foot, and half, I don't want to say fun. Yeah, it's fun. I don't care. Half the fun is wondering, is he or isn't he going to do it? What's he going to do? And that's, I think, kind of half the fun of this movie is just seeing how far these characters will be pushed and what's going to happen next. So.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say something similar about it was, to me, I think one of the first torture porn movies. But to that end, after Saw and Hostel, what's left? Did it kind of run its course quickly enough? Or are there still torture porn movies really coming out lately? What's the last thing that's come out? Like a Hostel.
I don't know. Jamie, you seem to be like the horror
expert
out of the group.
But this one isn't even like my favorite subgenre, although I really did enjoy Hostel for different reasons, not for all the torture. But no, I think you could maybe go there with some of Rob Zombie's films. Maybe they would get classified that way.
Yeah, especially
those are more like
Say The Hills Have Eyes. Is that one kind of like that?
Kind of. It's trickier because that was the remake, and I mean it got pretty brutal, out of control. But same director, Alex Aja, he did High Tension. I don't know if anyone's seen that.
Oh yeah, well yeah.
That one's also pretty bloody and gross and probably earned.
It's a remake of a French film, Haute Tension.
Yes. Yes. But no, I think you're right, Casey. I can't think of anything. And the Saw films, I think the last one came out last year, 2 years ago. So
yeah,
it kind of held the title.
Well, how many did they make? 8, 9? What did it get to? There's a ton of Saws.
Well, there's a
Was it
saber
Saw
saw,
3D?
there's a cross saw, chop saw,
Table Saw.
saber saw, or a sawzall.
7 films,
7.
it looks like. And yeah, I think the latest was just titled Jigsaw.
Oh, sure.
Jigsaw. Yeah,
Yep.
the first movie, that's the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think I stopped. I think the third was the last one I saw. I saw 1, 2, and 3.
Recommend?
That third is good. I mean, it depends if you're a fan of the genre and if you like seeing how. I remember I don't know if it was Lee Winnell, but there was an interview with him, the writer who also plays Adam in the film, or James Wan, the director, and they were just saying like literally it got to a point where we were researching medieval torture techniques and like how can we set up these games to kill people, and they're like, it was disturbing and kind of fun in a demented way to write, but ultimately, if after 3, that's kind of all you're in it for, in my estimation.
Has anybody seen Cube?
Yes.
This reminded me a lot of Cube as well, of like they have different like tasks that they have to do that are like equally like terrifying and awful, and like trying to like get through this like little maze or like get through this like kind of trials in order to save their lives or get out. And yeah, it was really reminiscent of that for me.
Yeah, that's a good reference too. I think Cube is like thinking person's Saw too, and
Yep.
which could almost be cited as an influence.
Don't
You just
compliment him
stroking-
like
yeah,
that.
no,
Don't
no, no,
compliment
no,
him
no,
like
no.
that.
He just played right into like, no, not happening.
Brilliant point,
You
Chris.
just got Jedi mind tricked.
I did not make it out of that game. No. But hey, Cube came first, so I mean, I think it's fair to say that it was an influence on Saw.
Does it have the same level of gore? I remember seeing Cubed once. I was probably stoned. Like
I don't.
when it first came.
Yeah, I've only seen it
DV or VHS or something.
once, and I think like the thing that I'm thinking of is like they had like a scene where like there were, I want to say like there's like a pit of like needles, like hypodermic needles, and they're having to like go through that, and like that's the scene that is really like sticking out in my mind. As far as like gory and like kind of, I don't think so at that point, because that was like what late 80s,
late 90s.
Yeah,
late
late
90s.
97 came out.
Okay. But no, I don't think it had the same amount of gore, but I think they depicted it differently.
Right.
Yeah, and it was more, Saw is more voyeuristic, like you're kind of in it with Jigsaw. Cube was more focused on the people. It was like a survival movie more than it was kind of like a gore film. It was more about the environment they were in and all of the mathematical components, with figuring out which room you just came in and trying to get to the next room, and they kind of deduce mathematically which rooms will hurt them, which will not, and they kind of use their knowledge to get out.
I also
that way.
think a difference of Cube is that you are like vying for the people in there to be successful, whereas for me in Jigsaw, like all of these people that Jigsaw is going after like are not very good people. Like they're kind of in essence like terrible human beings. So there's not as much like feeling of you want to see them get out, or you're not as invested in their.
It has a little
in their
bit of
plight.
Seven spice.
Yeah.
In this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Not fully going there with like the sin,
Right.
but maybe just kind of skirts the.
They don't want you to care about these people.
Right.
They want you to enjoy watching them
Right.
suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. I've never seen Cubed. I didn't know they had a hypodermic needle scene. But when you mention that, I think Saw 3 does something like that too. Throws like an addict into a pit of needles.
But you're right. Yeah,
Two.
you're right.
Yeah.
That's when the character Amanda, who was in the reverse bear trap, comes back. She's the one who dives into the needle pit.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
Fine.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
But like,
we-
spoilers fine.
valid question.
Isn't she like Jigsaw's chick in the end or something too?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like part of it.
Oh, she
Yeah.
likes it.
Well, no,
No.
she like turns after being tortured, claims that Jigsaw saved her from being a terrible person, which I guess they're all bad people, right? She survived and then decided not to be a bad person, and then now like worships Jigsaw or whatever.
Yeah, she's like the Anakin to his Palpatine.
Oh.
Yeah, she becomes
Interesting.
Jigsaw,
Right.
in one of the last
Wow.
movie, or maybe it is the last movie. I don't know. I haven't seen the last couple, but I always go spoil it and read online.
So it's like
Once I
Stockholm
was the learner,
syndrome.
now I
Yeah,
am
maybe.
the master.
right.
Yeah.
Did you have any other kind of like thoughts on your
No, I mean,
initial experience?
I mean, admittedly, I'm not really a horror guy. And I guess when I first saw Saw, I was probably down with gore and things like that. It's definitely not something I would choose to put back on now. Just it's not in my wheelhouse. But when I was younger, it was fine. I was actually gonna say, I also was thinking the comparison of like torture porn movies and thinking about the Rob Zombie movies then, because those are extremely violent. But those I see coming from more of, they're almost like satanic in nature. They're going for dark. They have these beliefs of just murder and killing, and the killing is part of those stories, whereas Saw is more, you're in it just to watch these people get tortured. So I don't know. I think that's its own, I think you got to give Rob Zombie almost his own genre of horror movies.
Well, yeah, I
'cause-
love was it House of a Thousand Corpses?
Corpses, yeah.
Love that film, but I really don't like Devil's Rejects.
Devil's Rejects almost gets too dark.
Yeah. Where it's just like, it's not even like fun to watch.
Well,
It's
and they
like-
almost make you try to empathize with the killers for a
Yeah.
little bit because you're seeing them struggle and getting
Right.
shot down. And well, it's like, no, you're the awful people. But they try to evoke that sympathy for them almost. But when they're the protagonist and the antagonist, which maybe that's exactly what he was going for, but just almost makes you feel gross. Like you kind of sympathize, but you're like, no, screw these people. I just watched them murder a whole family in a house.
And I'm kind of split down the middle on that as like a horror fan, because mostly I agree with you guys. That's how I felt throughout the whole movie. But in the end, like, I can't help myself when like Freebird cranks up and they get out of the car. I'm like, let's go. Yes. And yeah, I guess I can relate to Rob Zombie on that level.
Yeah, not to get too sidetracked, but Rob Zombie is really good at like mixing like the soundtracks with like the horror and the gratuitous violence in those films. But Kris, did you get a chance to share what your first experience was when you first saw this film?
No, so I also saw it similarly in high school. Yeah, I saw. I didn't see Saw.
Drink.
Saw. But I also saw it pretty young in high school. In remembering, like, I don't know, I've always been a sucker for like really good twists. We're gonna talk a little bit about
It's a twist.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about like our top 5 horror films, and one of them is, I don't really know if it's a horror film or not. I also am not super into horror movies. They're fine. Some are good,
scary,
but they generally tend to be like more predictable than I like.
Yeah.
But the movie The Others, which I don't know if you've seen that, I thought had a wonderful twist at the end, and like it's Nicole Kidman, and like it was really, really cool. You talked about Seven, which I love the twist at Seven.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest thing that like really stood out to me. I also thought like you had brought up Seven earlier, is like this movie felt a lot like Seven, and Seven is what like I saw first and like kind of cling to, is like thinking like that was such a cool movie, and like there's a lot of like dark imagery, a lot of like dark purpose, and I mean honestly the motivations are similar too, right? Like they want to try and like make the world a better place, even though they're doing it in a really like sadistic way. I think there's a lot of parallels that can be said. I remember when I first saw this movie thinking it was like a really cool idea. Watching it now as an adult and seeing it a second time, especially as like my interest in movies have grown, I like the first like 15 to 20 minutes were just unbearable. Like the acting was so terrible. And like, I just remember like noticing that more immediately, but I thought the story was really good. I forgot that Danny Glover was in this.
So did I.
Like, I didn't remember that at all. I was like, oh my God, Danny. But yeah, I think all in all, like it's a movie that I probably won't go back to, but like, it's a good watch. Like, and I think it's like for a psychological thriller and like, kind of that genre that you're talking about, I think it does the part well.
Yeah. The 15th anniversary of Saw.
Yeah.
Oh, it's October. Yeah, my first viewing experience was I did see it in a theater. I did go on a date.
Drink.
The acting like the first like 15, 20 minutes is just like over the top. But what was gripping me was the hook of like, why in the hell, like what is going on? Like I felt like that was so unique at that time, of kind of like slowly pulling back the layers of the onion to like into like this voyeuristic approach in the film. And go ahead.
I was say that's a very apt Shrek 2 comparison. The layer to the onion.
Right. Well, since this was like the year Shrek, was like one of the number one movies, I thought I would do some, relate it to another film, but
sorry, I kicked you off course.
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree. I think it's interesting to see a movie just kind of thrown in with no exposition, and you slowly learn about the characters, and it informs what you've already seen, and it kind of makes you rethink some of the earlier scenes or conversations.
And there's some kind of like the continuity of the film, like it kind of like you're kind of like going back and forth on like the timing, like things are like occurring, you kind of get see some parts of like the past, like just the timing of like how the characters are involved in it, like
it's like Memento.
But way better. Yeah, that is an awful movie, by the way.
Sir, I disagree.
All right, maybe we'll have to put that on the list.
Maybe
find out when that movie came out.
Well, and I don't want to give it too much credit because I don't think it's quite as smart as that. But what you said, I mean, like we got 2 unreliable narrators, and then so we know nothing, and they could both be bullshitting. So those flashbacks are helpful in that regard. That that's where we learn everything.
Right. And the just even like the two characters that are in that you are introduced to at the very beginning, like it's almost like the terrible acting is almost like tricking you, like is making you not being able to like who believe it. Like, is it the bad acting or is it just like the way the character is developing? Like, is that person like the one, was it like, there's a part in the movie where you maybe starting to think that the Carrie Ells, how do you say his last name?
Elwes? I'm never sure.
A Princess Bride guy.
Yeah,
That's
Robin
what I
Hood.
was gonna say.
Right, where you start to believe that maybe like he is like perpetrating this whole thing, but yeah, well, and just like the twist at the end was like, I think that was like one of the few like movies that I've seen at that time where it had like a fucking crazy twist at the end. Where it's just like, holy shit! Then like that's just how it ends. Like, dude gets up, closes it. What's he say at the end? He's just like, you don't have the will to.
I just know the final line is game over, but
Can he just fucking slams the door on him? But
yeah.
But-
So
but
did you?
isn't Princess Bride guy gonna come back for him?
That's the thing. That's the loose end they leave it. He comes back.
This has come out in
Spoiler
Saw
alert.
2?
He comes back not in 2, but they do bring
In
him back
4.
into the franchise.
In 3.
And not in 3.
Okay.
I can't remember which film it is. But so you saw it in the theater. Did Kris and Casey you see it in the theater? Okay.
No.
And I don't remember, this is where my memory gets hazy, if it was the theater or just with friends, but I just remember that moment when he stands up at the end, like the audible, oh,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. And he just peels like the prosthetic or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
And I thought too, like one of the things, like the big twist too, is not just the fact that that guy's alive, but also that Zed, is that his name?
Yeah.
Like that Zed was not like the perpetrator the entire time. Like
Right. And yeah, they start to
Like-
kind of feed you
like
that too.
yeah,
that
like
he
like
is-
that's the like
Yeah.
I'm listening to this, I'm watching it, and it's oh my gosh, it's like he's the guy who's running it all, and then you
Yeah.
find out that he's also being a part of this puzzle being thrown into it by
The game is
Jigsaw.
bigger
And it's
than
yeah,
you can
it's-
imagine.
It was really, really a cool twist and something that I remember just kind of being in awe of, because similarly, I had not seen a lot of movies that did that and that did that well.
Well, and if to date myself further, I don't remember how this aligns with Lost, but Lost was one of the biggest shows when it was out on TV, and he played the character
Benjamin Linus.
Benjamin Linus.
Oh, yeah.
Season 2.
And Miles is in this film
He
too.
is, yeah.
He's one of the detectives.
Yep. So I just remember, if you saw this around that time or even after, like, you were very aware of who Benjamin Linus was, so there was no doubt in your mind that he was the bad guy, because he's one
Right.
of the top TV villains,
Right.
I think, of all time.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about characters in the film or actors that have played characters in the film that are in other great roles, I just want to throw out there, we have the 2 Lost cast members, but we also have Monica Potter, who played Christina Braverman in Parenthood. You ever watch that TV show? Oh, very good, very good. Better than This Is Us.
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired.
I don't watch either, but that'll offend some of the This Is Us
Yeah,
fans
that's
for
my
sure.
whole point, right?
That's
Flame bait.
So Lost was 2004, but Ben wasn't in season 1, was he? I don't think
You're
Ben
right.
was in season 1.
Season
You're right.
2,
So that was
right?
pre-Lost.
That was
We did-
pre-Lost.
yeah.
So that tees it up for Lost.
Wait, is that a
Course
prequel?
correct.
It's a prequel.
It's a prequel.
Right? That's when he left the island and he went back and came back.
Yeah, I didn't see the final season. This is probably where he was during that time.
Of Lost.
You never finished Lost?
I finished
Jamie hates Jamie hates final seasons of shows.
only of Game of Thrones, let me be clear.
He's really salty about Game of Thrones.
You are in good company.
You and most of the internet.
yeah.
All right, so anyway,
It was terrible.
Does anyone
It's like
else
they
have
stopped trying.
anything to add? Seesaw. It's kind of like one of those films, like maybe like it's worth one good watch, but after that, it's time you could file that one away and just say that you saw it.
Well, just one thing for its legacy, just where horror is now. This movie, in many ways, kind of shaped horror now with James Wan and Lee Winnell. Like, they kind of own the big box office horror movies. Like, they got the Insidious franchise, the Conjuring franchise. I mean, this got them some big writing and directing roles. So I don't know. I think it's, significant in that way.
You know, one of the things I would probably just say is, again, not being a huge horror fan, I think some of the issues that I have with it is just it feels like there's a lot of tropes that continue to come and a lot of predictability. Excuse me. And I feel like one of the things that this movie did was it was smart. It was clever. It was something that I had not seen before. And the way that they had to put all of these pieces together, you were talking about that timeline. It was really well done. And I think that's one of the reasons why, to me, this movie sticks out in the horror genre. Is just, it was good. It was smart. And they did a really good job with it.
Definitely have to agree with that.
Well, and you've compared it a couple of times to Seven, right? With especially the twist ending and talking about twist endings. And while I think this was kind of, to your point, one of the ones where it happens, you go, oh, snap, like you're surprised and kind of like jazz, like, oh, that's nuts. With Seven, that twist, like that emotionally affected me. Like the movie ended and I was not okay. You know, for a little bit, you just get this like gross gut feeling like, oh, damn, that sucks so bad. And I'd say that's a way more impressive like emotion to invoke in someone than just the, oh snap, what a cool twist. Like it's hard to, like you compare those, but man, Seven, that's just chokes you up a little bit.
Yeah.
Casey.
Maybe I'm too much of a softie, but that was like, that's a rough, like, holy cow. Like it just kind of comes to a head and you just kind of feel gross.
I loved that ending. I thought it was
no,
perfect.
yeah, absolutely. No, I
love
wouldn't
that he
change
was
it.
able to finish everything he put forth. Like you do not see it. It is not a feel-good movie, but that entire movie is not a feel-good movie. Fincher did it perfectly.
But you feel like, you know what I mean? You feel
absolutely.
like, oh,
What's in the box?
yes. It's so hard.
All right. So I think right now we should get into our top 5 scary movies. So I'm thinking what we should do is we'll just start at number 5 and we'll just go around and I'll like say my number 5 and like Chris would say his number 5 and we'll just kind of work our way to our number 1 scary film. Sound like a plan, guys?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into that though, I threw this question out on Twitter and I did get one response from Griffin's Terrible Childhood. That's at GmanTB for respondents to the Movie Time Machine Twitter with their top 5 horror films. And they said not in any particular order, but their 5 films were Alien, Trick or Treat, The Reanimator. They said the Integral Cut. John Carpenter's The Thing.
What up?
That's a favorite of the Time Machine. And Evil Dead 2. They put some honorable mentions here. Bride of Reanimator, the original Halloween, some more JC cred there. And John Carpenter, not Jesus Christ, of course. And the original Dawn of the Dead.
Are we sure about that?
So, what's that?
John Carpenter?
It's close, man.
Okay.
It's close.
Just checking.
All right, so yeah, just thanks again to Griffin's Terrible Childhood for responding to that. So,
solid list. Solid list.
Great Twitter handle.
Wait, hold on. Can we just emphasize we don't think that the childhood was bad.
yes,
But the
thank you,
handle
thank you,
specifically.
Thank you. Casey,
And your contribution
Casey
tonight was
Moral
great.
Compass. All right, so who wants to go first? Hey, Chris, you seem really eager. You go first.
I am. So I don't really have a number 5. Again, not super into horror movies, but I remember watching 2 horror movies that I thought were like honorable mentions or that I thought were really funny. So I've got 2 number 5s. Leprechauns in the Hood.
Oh yeah.
Was brilliant. Also Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yes,
Those
love that
two were
candy.
like, those 2 movies were movies that like we would put on and we just laugh at and have in the background. And
Awesome.
I'll give them an honorable mention here now.
I love it. All right, Casey.
Yeah, so again, I like Chris said too, I'm not really a huge horror fan, but I did pick out 5 because I have seen a handful of them. My wife really loves horror movies, so I've seen a couple. But number 5 for me, not because it's scary, just because it's one of the ones I enjoy so much, was Cabin in the Woods. I think it was kind of a funny way, like a meta horror movie, just kind of poking fun and paying homage all at the same time to all the different tropes and kind of throwing them all together. So it was kind of scary, like some jump scares here and there. It wasn't too spooky, like you didn't feel unsettled at any point, but entertaining the whole way through.
That's a great pick.
Yeah.
I love that movie as well. My number 5, and I want to just outline for everyone how I wrote my list. I picked, these are not necessarily my 5 favorite. These are the ones that I find the scariest. So The Shining is not on this list. Alien is not on this list. Those are 2 of my favorites, but they didn't scare me as much as these ones did. So my number 5, it's called The Wailing, or Goksung, excuse my pronunciation. It's South Korean. It came out, I want to say 2016, so it's fairly recent. You can find it on Netflix for anyone who's interested. But the best way to describe it is it's a small town, and a cop is investigating these families. Someone keeps getting sick, and then the whole family goes down, and we don't know kind of much more than that. And he's kind of trying to figure out which evil presence or whatever is taking down these families. And to keep it short, it's kind of a South Korean exorcist kind of film. There's a lot of spirituality going on, and I think more than anything else, why I really dug it and why it kind of knocked me on my ass is just culturally, it's just such a far cry from American horror and anything I'd seen. So on that level, it scared me a lot more. Just not knowing their religious beliefs or background, I had no idea what was going on. So immediately after I turned it off, I was just in the South Korean horror Reddit hole for like 2 hours. So yeah, number 5, The Wailing, if you want to see something really different, and if you're into kind of the whole spiritual exorcism kind of thing, it's really creepy.
Awesome.
It's funny you say that about not understanding like some of the religious beliefs, and that made it scarier. I remember watching Ringu, the original Ring.
Yes.
And there were some images in that I found not scary, but apparently to them would have been really like terrifying imagery.
Yeah.
But it was like a person with a sheet over their head. I was like, whoop-de-doo, that's not scary. When in comparison, because I had seen the original Ring, which is a lot more graphic and more Americanized, scary, right? So yeah, it's kind of funny that it actually worked for you on that level, where I kind of remember a few times where I was like, this isn't that scary.
Yeah.
My number 5 is a movie called... Actually, I just found out that it's not called The Darkness, because that is not a good film.
Great band.
It's called... Okay, sidetrack. Darkness, starring Anna Paquin. I think it came on in the early 2000s. It's like one of those typical movies where it's like the family moves into a new home, and like all of a sudden like these terrors start coming out, but everything that comes out is like when it's at night. So you can never see what like the apparitions or whatever like the thing is that's coming to get you. But yeah, the ending of that movie is what terrifies me, and just like it kind of leaves you with that like kind of like empty gut feeling of like, whoa, like what the fuck? Then it just ends. But yeah, Darkness.
Add that to my list. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I think it's like 90 minutes. So, quick flick.
That's like the perfect time.
Yeah.
That's the perfect timing for me.
Yeah.
90 minutes, hour and a half.
Yep.
All right. Number 4 for me is a movie that we've already spoken about, but The Others. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really good. I'm actually not a huge Nicole Kidman fan, but
Me either.
I really liked her in that movie, and the twist is great, and everything leading up to it is really, really good.
Is that the Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie, essentially?
No.
The Others is similar to the one that you were just talking to, where they buy a new home and there's all these kind of things that are happening that are really kind of weird and creepy, and they have no understanding of why it's happening and what's going on. And
It's a really good gothic. God, the word is escaping me. I agree. It's a really good ghost story, gothic kind of movie.
All right.
Cool. Yeah. So my number 4, I actually did pivot after Cabin in the Woods, and now these are ones that did scare me as well. I mean, maybe not. Well, I don't see a lot of horror movies, so I had to stretch for a few of them. But for number 4 for me was Paranormal Activity, the first one.
Oh, yeah.
I thought in a similar way that the Blair Witch Project was kind of a new, unique take on a genre. I think it was really interesting to see most of the film through the footage, kind of the security camera footage, because especially it's even more relevant nowadays, because I know I have cameras in my house and I watch like my kid on the nanny cam when he's sleeping. I could easily see creepy things like that would really creep you out, seeing that kind of thing. So having the whole movie kind of be like that, and I think the subtle horror in it, right? You never saw the demon, and I think it was maybe in the first one, maybe it was the second one where they put I think flour on the floor and they actually show like demon footprints. Maybe that was in the second one, but that was a really cool kind of very subtle way to show what this thing is, but you never actually see it. And then the twist at the very end I thought was kind of one of those affects you a little bit Not nearly as much as 7, but you're kind of like, ah, dang. Like, it's kind of one of those twists at the end that leave you feeling like that.
How did that one end?
She like got possessed and like threw him against the camera, basically, right?
Yeah.
She murders her husband or whatever, is fully possessed by the demon, and then leaves. And then it actually goes into the second film. She's kind of in that one too.
Yeah,
I
we
think.
had like a tradition where we're gonna watch a Paranormal Activity like every Halloween. I think we got to like 3, but I don't remember them. But
Three was good. That one, and I think 1 had 2 endings, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was a because I've seen 2 different endings to that movie. You're right, Casey. That's one of them, and then the other one, it might be like a bonus on the DVD. She walks downstairs, and you hear the cops, and they shoot her, and I think they didn't use that because Katie comes back.
Well, yeah, and in that ending too, doesn't she kill him, and then the thing lets her go, and then she realizes she does that?
Yeah, you're right.
And then she wanders downstairs and gets murdered. So it's even sadder. It's kind of like the ending of The Fog. Wasn't there an alternate ending of The Fog? Was it the Fog or The Mist, where they're driving and they like murder suicide everyone in the car, and then they find out they were at the very edge of the fog. Is it The Fog? The Mist.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's like that kind of horrible ending where she does it, wakes up, and then they let her just go die.
Yes.
Oh, is that with the dude from Smallville?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that
remember
also had an alternate ending that was even worse, because I think his kid was in the car, and I think the alternate ending, he kills his kid and then gets out of the car, and there's the military after murdering his like kid. Awful. I think that was the alternate ending.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that Casey, I almost put that on my list. Paranormal Activity. It was so close. The scene that gets me is when Micah's asleep and Katie's just up and she's walking and moving around, and I'm a heavy sleeper. My wife is not. So on that level, like I could be totally out and have no idea what's going on in my house.
Creepy.
She loves me. She loves me. She loves me.
Is that your number 4?
No.
Okay.
No. So my number 4, I cheated. I picked 2. I couldn't decide. It was a tie between It Follows and Pet Sematary, the original.
The originals.
Yeah.
Creepy. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I mean, It Follows is pretty self-explanatory. It's just it's a really scary concept. I think the director even said in an interview he wrote it after a nightmare he had where the same person just kept following him and he couldn't get away from them. So, yeah, I highly recommend that. It's a ghost kind of starts chasing these teens after they have sex with one another. It's like a, big STD metaphor, but but that's how it gets you.
The proper term is STI.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. I'm living in the 90s here.
Come on, man. You're better than that.
Yeah. But I do have a bit more to say about Pet Sematary. That I saw that when I was a teenager, and that wasn't on my list until I became a dad. And I think I still haven't read the book yet. I know that's famously one of the hardest for Stephen King to write. He put it in a drawer for, I don't know, a year or 2 and didn't pull it out until his publisher needed a book. And that's upsetting on so many levels. Even if the 80s horror is a bit dated, I still love it, but it's a bit dated. I just think the whole concept is really upsetting. Chad or Chris.
Sorry, I was going to, before you move on, did you see the remake that just came out?
I haven't.
Okay.
I really want to see it.
Have you?
No, I haven't yet. So I'm just curious if you feel like it lives up to what the original was. I've heard kind of mixed reviews.
Me too.
Is the mixed reviews? Is this another like critic versus like fan?
I think, I don't know if it's that. I know they changed some pretty essential elements of the original film. Mm-hmm. So I think, well, I guess in that sense it would be. The fans kind of weren't pleased with that.
Like I don't want to go back and just see a rehashing of a film. My favorite thing is like if they're gonna reboot something, like reimagine like the story and give it like a new sheen
and make it your own.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. For me, number 4 is the movie Hostel, and this is the whole idea of like that movie made it seem so real that you could be anywhere and just get like lured in. Like you could just be at a party and just get lured in, and all of a sudden like you're gonna get kidnapped and like held hostage, and like the whole like torture and everything that goes on, and like just that movie all around terrifies the shit out of me. But yeah, number 4 for Chad, Hostel.
All right, number 3. So this is where I'm actually getting into stuff that I thought was like kind of frightening. Like 2 and 3 are my like actually like, oh, those are like
Oh, we're getting scared.
Kinda like
as we work up to 1.
creepy.
Yeah.
So number 3 for me is Funny Games. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but there's an original and then they remade it a couple years after, but it's super creepy. It's this like really well-to-do area in, I don't know, Westchester or something, like some on the lake or whatever, and some like 2 boys invade the home of a family, and like basically they just do it because they're bored and they have nothing better to do, and it's all of the things that like ensue, and it's just them like being sadistic and evil, and it's creepy.
It's a really upsetting movie.
Yeah, it is. It's really upsetting, but it's like
I wanted to watch that movie. It just looks disturbing.
It
but
is,
like how does that movie end?
God, I haven't seen it in a while. I'm trying to remember. I think it's one of the like a babysitter, like someone in the neighborhood comes and I think like saves the family.
Yeah.
They somehow are able to defeat the 2 brothers.
All right.
But yeah, it was like legitimately creepy and like unnerving.
Sweet. Casey.
So my number 3 probably scared me most just because I saw it when I was younger, and it's kind of influenced a slight bit of thalassophobia. I don't know if you know what thalassophobia is. It's the fear of like dark, deep water. So obviously it was Jaws is number 3 on my list.
Deep Blue?
No, well, Deep Blue Sea, I have a soft spot for shark movies. So I do.
Meg.
Oh, dude, I don't think I saw Meg, but I read a book called Meg. I think it was the same story.
That's Statham, right?
We can talk about that when we do the Snatch podcast.
No, but it is him, right?
It is, yeah.
We could talk about when he peaked too.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, no. So Jaws, I just the concept of like sharks attacking and hunting a boat, even not just like prey, but going for vengeance. And then you think of just how vast our oceans are, and you know, you don't know what actually lurks down in there. So maybe it didn't instill a fear of sharks per se. I actually think sharks are super fascinating. I have a shark tattoo on my arm and everything.
Shark.
But like the oceans are so deep, what could be lurking down there? It could come up in.
When I went to we went on our honeymoon, we went to Puerto Rico, stayed on the island of Vieques, and really my first time in the Caribbean. So I'm just like in the water, just like digging my feet into the sand. I'm just like, whoa, look what I found, $1, right? It's like, and Angela was just like, you're crazy. Like you don't know what's down there. Like, I'm like, whatever. A couple days later, we go snorkeling. We're out swimming. We kind of got pulled away from the beach, and like I look down, and there's nothing but sea urchins.
Yep, no.
Nothing but sea urchins and a barracuda.
Yeah, no.
Ocean terrifies me now.
Yep, I can't do water, period. That stuff is so frightening to me. But I think going back to Jaws, I think one of the things that Spielberg did so well is suspense in that movie.
Yep.
Like you don't see that shark until the end, and yes, like some of it was like the mechanical issues that they were having, but because of that, like he made this like incredibly transformational film in his ability to create that suspense throughout is what makes that movie, and what I think is the most like frightening. And I think the idea that you don't see that shark till the end is absolutely perfect.
Well, and I think what really gets into it is I think humans have this innate knowledge and sort of fear and respect for water, right? We're not meant to be in the water. And so when you stick them out there on this boat out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just them versus this creature that lives and breathes, and that's its universe, it'll own them there. I think those types of films, deep water type things like that really evoke that different sense of fear, because I think that's kind of innate in all of us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good take.
All right. Number 3, it's hard to follow up Jaws. I love that movie so much. My number 3 is Danny Boyle film, 28 Days Later. It's zombie film 2000. I want to say
3 or 4, I think.
Oh, is it that old?
Yeah.
Okay.
28 days later.
Yeah. I believe you. 2007 was in my mind. I could be wrong. Anyway, that was kind of at the height of the zombie genre. Well, Walking Dead
2002.
came later. Okay, wow, it's a lot older than I thought. Yeah, I love zombie movies. I always have. George Romero is kind of, I don't want to say like hero, but he's definitely up there. Everything he does, I love it. Dawn of the Dead, the original, is one of my favorite movies of all time. But I think what 28 Days Later did is Dawn of the Dead is scary, and this just ratchets it up. And you guys know what I'm trying to say.
Ratchet up.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the zombies are sprinting, and it's to be stuck in a city, a highly populated city with no plan for escape. I don't know what I would do. That's one of the most frightening scenarios I can imagine. So 28 Days Later, my pick. Great movie outside of even just being that scary. Chad.
All right. For 3, I had Saw, just because the experience of just the first time seeing that, and that was kind of like a first time experience. And it was kind of like a moment in film, I think, for that horror genre. So yeah, Saw.
All right.
Bad.
Number 2 for me is The Strangers. That was a really creepy movie, and just I constantly think about the whole knocking at the door, is Tamara home? I cannot, I can't do that. That was frightening. It was terrifying, and everything that continues after that. So The Strangers for me.
What was your movie before that?
That was Funny Games.
Okay. I was getting those two crisscross. I've seen Strangers. I was thinking that was Funny Games. But anyway.
No, and I was actually just now trying to think of, should I swap out my 2 with The Strangers, because that's another one of those movies that, especially after, what is that one person shotguns their friend on accident. Oh. So the ending is awful. So many terrible things happen. It gives you that gross feeling too. That. I think that's how you know it's a good horror movie.
Right.
It leaves you kind of feeling affected afterwards.
Yep.
My number 2 is, I mentioned before, was The Ring. I thought when I first saw that movie, really freaked me out. From the first jump, where I think they had the body kind of pull out of the closet and you see the gross face, and wasn't a super cheesy jump scare, but it just the grotesqueness of it. And they had a good violin string jab or something in the soundtrack to go along with it, so it kind of invokes it. But it wasn't a jump scare, but you jumped kind of like you would. So it was kind of a good first scare. And then from that all the way to where the damn girl crawls out of the dang TV, man. You don't think it's going to happen, and then she pops out, and you're like, oh, here we go.
Oh,
damn girl.
In that spirit, I'm going to flip-flop my 2 and my 1, because my number 1 is The Ring. And to set the scene, kind of like Casey, I saw this was 2001, and I remember we went around Halloween with a group of friends, and horror was not, coming out of the 90s, horror was not necessarily scary. So to see a PG-13 with your friends is a fun Halloween thing. Thanks, Chad. I don't think nobody knew, unless you had seen Ringu, what was about to happen in that movie. And I maintain that should be rated R, just for being disturbing, no violence or anything like that. It is just that freaky. And like Casey said, the 2 most unsettling things for me, one, when they solve it, they figure out who she is, get her out of the well, and then her son says, why'd you help her? You shouldn't have helped her. And it's oh shit, we misunderstood everything. She's not misunderstood. She is evil. So that's number 1. And number 2 was just when she comes out of the TV, because you don't know the rules yet. You don't know what she's capable of, and you don't think that's going to happen. And then suddenly it does, and you don't feel safe in the theater with the big screen right in front of you. So yeah, that movie affected me for years. Nightmares, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's a movie I wish I would have been able to see in a theater. I saw it on a 13-inch television.
Not the same experience.
Not the same experience.
We actually had a friend in high school that we pranked by turning on the light. We all stayed in someone's house that night, and we turned it on the TV and turned all the lights off, and he was the only one in the room, and he woke up or whatever with that on, and he started freaking out. And then we had a friend come out of the room, another room, with a wig on, and it wasn't a very obviously did not look like the girl. It was a tall, lanky high school kid, but just the imagery of it was pretty good. That's something that would freak anyone out.
That's good. My friends know me well and know this about me. I've had to openly declare to them that if you do that, I'm swinging, I'm throwing fists. So I can relate.
My number 2 is Alien. Not necessarily a movie that really scares me, but I just remember the first time seeing that, I was probably 7, pretty young when I saw that movie, and just the grotesqueness of the xenomorph, like the mouth inside a mouth thing, like in like the goo and the ooze. I was like, oh man, this is fucking disgusting, but it's so cool. But
Well, it's like nerve wrenching too. Like it's suspenseful.
yeah.
I'm surprised it's like I think of like the moment that it like jumps out of the chest. Like that to me is like way more disturbing.
Oh, like yeah.
Like that that's the moment that
you
I'm
know
like,
what kind of like brought that down for me is like having seen Spaceballs so many times. Like it's just like a comedic moment. The hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. No, yeah, but just like that entire movie, it's just like it's almost like having like rats in your house, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know it's there, but like you don't know when you're gonna see it. But yeah, Alien, great terror for a young Chad.
yeah. All right, so going to our number one, or I guess my number one. One of the reasons I don't really love horror movies is I just feel like there's not a lot of thought in the story, the plot. They generally tend to be very predictable. And I really appreciate dialogue. I really appreciate a really good story. So with that in mind, my number one is The Shining. Hands down, Kubrick does a great job directing it. It's a wonderful, like, I know you're in suspense the entire time. Like you're trying to figure out what's going on. So like you're trying to like work through it as well. To me, it's just an awesome, awesome movie. And I watched that movie and I just constantly think of like just feeling uneasy the entire time.
Chris, have you seen Room 237, the documentary?
Yeah, I did on Netflix for
Okay.
sure.
Just making sure.
Kubrick films, I feel like almost all of his films are super disturbing.
Oh yeah, Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork
like
Orange.
was
Even like
messed
2001 is
up.
disturbing.
Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey. Then you got what was the his last one he did with
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah.
It's super fucked up.
He did the Doctor Strangelove too.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that movie.
Yeah.
And that's like
oh, it's such a good movie.
yeah, it's great, but it's still like so strange.
It is very strange.
Full Metal Jacket, another one of my favorites.
Oh my god, there's one of my favorite lines in that movie is "How tall are you, boy?" 6 foot or something like that. I didn't know they stacked piles of shit that high.
Arlie
so
Ermy, man, right?
Well, and that movie's like 2 movies in one, even. So it's not
Yeah.
even fair because it's literally the mood, the tone, everything completely 180s. And it's like a whole nother film after,
Yeah.
the boot camp stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, actually, before my number one, I wanted to throw in another honorable mention that I was going to crack my list with, but I think it's too much of a thriller, less of a horror movie. But I just absolutely love, hands down, I thought Get Out was fantastic.
Oh,
100%.
I think it was just such a
yeah.
unique way to present some sort of imagery
call.
or some sort of horror. Not exactly horror, but just like those same types of that tension, that same gut check that you get in horror movies.
that's a good rewatchable film because
It's really smart.
You see
Yeah.
like shit like every time you rewatch that film, you're just like, oh yeah, like the amount of detail in that film is just amazing.
And you could watch that movie at any period in time and it would be fantastic, but to be living in 2019 with actual cultural issues we're going through and having it
very
explained in that
relevant.
way, super relevant, super like on the pulse at the exact time that it couldn't have come out at a better time.
Right.
It fits so perfect. So I
Awesome.
wanted to throw that out there, but
Good shout out.
my actual number one, and I haven't seen it in quite a while, but it freaked me out so much. It gave me kind of the heebie-jeebies throughout the rest of the day, even
Jeepers
after,
Creepers.
Yeah, exactly. No, was Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, dang,
that's a good one.
Jacob's Ladder, I
Good
thought was a
call.
fantastic movie. That is who is that? Tim Robbins is in that film, Shawshank Redemption. Tim Robbins. I guess if you haven't seen it, it's a vet comes back from Vietnam and he starts having these weird images. He starts seeing demons, and he gets together with some of his other war veteran friends, and they're starting to describe similar demons. And so they think like the government did something to them, and yada yada yada. And I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, but the twist on that's kind of interesting. And Just kind of a cool way of explaining it. I don't know. I just remember being really kind of creeped out because it wasn't, cheap jump scares. It didn't do anything like that, but it was a lot of just subtle, he's seeing these things. He thinks they're following him. He's seeing demons kind of, walking behind people, and then he sees them out of the corner of his eye and then doesn't see him again. Just really creepy, really good, subtle tension built up throughout that. And then kind of a cool twist in the end.
In addition to that, I don't know if anyone's a fan of True Detective, but has anyone seen season 3?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to shout out the way that they depict Mahershala Ali's Vietnam demons. It kind of reminds me a lot of Jacob's Ladder. It's done really well. It's my favorite part of that season, I think.
Yeah. That was really good. I didn't love season 2, but I thought season 3 was really redeeming.
I agree. They brought it back for sure. Okay, my number 1, which is actually my number 2, but that's okay. So this is it's The Exorcist, and to kind of ground that for me, I'm born and raised Catholic. I have since drifted from the church, and I think if you find The Exorcist scary, first and foremost, you're probably Catholic, and and what, regardless of what I believe or don't believe now, or how far I am from the church, it's just a part of my DNA. Like, it's that ghost is in my machine, just being raised that way. So it continues to just frighten me. The visuals, the fact that everything about it, it's a little girl who did nothing wrong, and now her life is literally hell on earth. And there's nothing she can do. Her body's being invaded, not her fault. She didn't do anything. And that's just one of the most horrifying things to me, that something could happen to me. I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I didn't sin. It's like, it doesn't even make sense in Catholicism with, I guess, original sin, but she didn't sin. And this is all happening to her. So it gets me. And even today, I mean, the special effects, it's incredible. I think it still holds up.
That was like, I think, another like early golden era of horror too, because you have like that, you have like The Omen.
Yes.
I think it's like the original Hellraiser, not too far off from The Exorcist, or is that a
Hellraiser
little
was
bit
more 80s.
More 80s. I think it's like early 80s.
The dude with like the nails in the head, right?
Pinhead.
Yeah.
I gotta go back and watch that sometime. Awesome. Great film so far. So my number 1 is the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again,
Nice.
It's all about the timing. I saw this on television as a very young child when I lived in Texas. And it was being promoted as based on a true story. It's like, fuck. And just like the imagery of the people in that, like where I was living at the time, is like I knew people that weren't too far off from the looks of the people in this film. It just, and I don't know, when you're wearing like the dead skid mask and everything like that. So yeah, it's probably one that I want to actually go back and watch that film, because I haven't seen that one probably since I was a child. So
I'm a little.
and even like the remake of that film I think it was actually done very well too. It's pretty good.
Is anybody else surprised that nobody said anything about like 2 of the most iconic scary figures, which is Jason and Michael Myers? Like, there wasn't Halloween, there wasn't Nightmare Before or Nightmare on Elm Street, any of
They're
those
not
movies.
scary anymore.
I think slasher and horror are 2 different genres,
Sure.
though. I think those probably fall, like Scream, the original Screams kind of fall into these teen slashers where they kind of set those characters up as, oh, they're these teens off having sex in the woods. You're not supposed to like them. They try to paint them in a negative way so that you don't care that all these people just get murdered.
Yep.
Whereas horror, I think, affects you on a different level.
Sure.
Yeah. And while it's not my favorite, Scream's or not one of the scariest, Scream's one of my all-time favorite movies. I think I've seen that more than, any other horror or slasher movie.
What's your feeling on Matthew Lillard?
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love him.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I.
Who is
Secretly.
that?
When he's like bleeding out, he's like, I think you got too deep, man.
I just love him.
I don't want to
much.
break the internet, but I've never seen Scream.
You know Matthew Lillard.
I mean, what are your thoughts on like Jason, Freddy? Do you enjoy slashers?
I really did like the Nightmare on Elm Street films,
Yep.
especially number 3, Dream Warriors, best soundtrack. Dawkin, knocking. Who's Dawkin? Dawkin's there.
I think you dig Scream. It's kind of a more modern, like 90s. It's the 90s slasher classic, right? So you've got
I've heard good things.
Yeah.
Again, I think that came out mid to late 90s. Scream?
Yeah.
Yeah. pop culture black hole.
We got to get you out of that at
I
some
know.
point, Chad.
Oh, you can. It's past.
That's true.
It's over. So, all right. Awesome. I think that was a great discussion on Saw and horror films for leading up to Halloween. So, thank you for listening to this episode of Movie Time Machine. And thank you, Casey, for joining us today. It's been awesome to have you here. You can find us on Twitter at Movie Machine Pod. That's at Movie Machine Pod. Send us some comments. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Send us your favorite horror movies.
At Griffin's Terrible Bad Day. Let us know more.
Bad day.
I hope your day got better.
All right. Thank you very much and good day.